The moment he tossed my cane into the trash like it was nothing, I realized I wasn't family anymore. I was furniture. I'm 69 years old, and I walk with a cane because my right hip doesn't always cooperate, especially in the mornings. Doctors call it arthritis. I call it proof that I lived a long, working life and paid the price honestly. That cane wasn't weakness. It was balance. It was independence. Or at least it was, until my son-in-law decided I didn't deserve it. We were standing in the hallway of their house. I still stumble over that word in my head, there. I moved in after a bad fall last winter. My daughter, Emily, said it would be temporary. Just until I healed. Temporary has a way of stretching when it's convenient for everyone but you. I had leaned my cane against the wall to take off my coat. It slipped and tapped the floor. Barely a sound. But he looked up from his phone like I'd shattered glass. Do you really need that thing all the time? Mark said. I didn't answer. Silence had become safer than honesty. That's when he picked it up, 2 fingers, like it was dirty, and dropped it straight into the trash can. No angit. No drama. Just casual. Like tossing an empty coffee cup. My balance shifted before my mind caught up. My hand reached for something that wasn't there. The wall was cold against my palm. You'll manage, he said. You're not helpless. Emily was in the kitchen. She heard it. I know she did. She didn't come out. And right then something clicked into place inside me. Not rage. Not shock. Clarity. Clean and sharp. This wasn't about the cane. It was about control. And he thought he had all of it. I didn't reach into the trash. I didn't say a word. I memorized everything instead. The time on the clock, the position of the bin, the quiet in the house. Because some habits never leave you. And I knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. What Mark didn't know was that I never forget moments like that. And I always prepare. After he threw away my cane, I learned something dangerous. In that house, my safety was optional. I started moving differently after that morning. Not out of fear, out of awareness. I learned which furniture could hold my weight. The edge of the counter. The back of a chair. The doorframe into the bathroom. Every step became intentional. Careless movement wasn't just risky anymore. It was humiliating. Living with Emily and Mark taught me lessons no one ever says out loud. Being welcomed is not the same as being wanted. They never called me a burden. They didn't have to. I felt it in the pauses when I entered a room. In conversations that restarted without me. In how my presence was tolerated, not included. Emily still called me Mom. But her voice sounded thinner now. Stretched between love and fear. Fear of conflict. Fear of choosing. Fear of what Mark might say if she defended me too clearly. Mark liked control, not the loud kind. The quiet kind. He controlled the thermostat, the grocery list, the TV volume. Eventually, he controlled the mood of the house itself. You could feel it when he walked in. Everyone adjusted. I did too. I stopped watching the news because it annoyed him. Stopped calling my friend Linda because he said I talked too long. Stopped making tea after 9 because the kettle was too loud. Each small surrender felt harmless. Together, they built a cage that looked like courtesy. Before my fall, I lived alone for over a decade. Paid my bills. Made my own choices. Independence doesn't disappear overnight. It erodes when you're gently reminded that you're lucky someone puts up with you. After the cane incident, Mark stopped looking at my face when he spoke to me. He talked over me. Around me. Like I might accidentally answer. That's when I understood something important. Staying quiet wasn't protecting me. It was training him. And that realization didn't make me brave. It made me patient. Because while Mark believed silence meant surrender, I was already counting everything he didn't know. Mark never raised his voice. And that's how I knew he was dangerous. Men like Mark don't shout. They erase. Slowly. Quietly. Like it's a favor. It started with corrections. Small ones. The cups go here now. That's too much water. Emily likes it done this way. He said my daughter's name a lot when he spoke to me, like he was borrowing her authority to make his words heavier. He never sounded angry. Disappointment was his weapon. It hung in the air, unstated, unavoidable. When company came over, he transformed. pulled out chairs for me, asked if I was comfortable, told people how lucky they were to have me staying with them for a bit. I smiled along because correcting the illusion would have taken more energy than I had. The moment the door closed behind the last guest, he exhaled, like my presence alone exhausted him. He never thanked me for folding laundry, never acknowledged when I watched their son so they could go out. He never used my name. "I was she or your mom," said the way you talk about an inconvenience. One afternoon, I overheard him on the phone. He thought I was asleep. "She's old, not sick," he said quietly. "She plays it up." Guilt manipulation. I sat on my bed and listened to the house hum around me. Proof that I existed, even as he rewrote me into a problem. The worst moments weren't cruel. They were ordinary. Conversations where my words disappeared. Decisions made about me without me. Jokes that landed just short of insult, so I couldn't object without sounding sensitive. The cane wasn't a surprise. It was a summary. And once I understood that, I stopped reacting. I started observing. Because while Mark thought he'd train me to disappear, I was learning exactly how he operated. The night he threw out my cane, he thought there were no witnesses. And that mistake changed everything. That evening no one mentioned the cane. Dinner happened like nothing had changed. Plates clinked. The TV murmured. Silence did its usual job of pretending everything was fine. Balancing without the cane took constant effort. Every movement had to be planned. Not once did either of them offer help. Emily glanced at me, guilt flashing across her face. Then she looked back at her plate. Mark talked about work. About managing people who expected special treatment. Men like him confess without realizing it. Later, in my room, pain woke me in layers. First my body, then my thoughts. I lay there listening to the house breathe. That's when it hit me. The cameras. Mark installed them last year after a package went missing. One by the front door. One in the hallway. One angled just enough to catch the trash bin. He'd bragged about being prepared. In the dark, I smiled. I didn't rush. Urgency clouds judgment. I waited until the house emptied the next morning. Emily left for work. Mark followed soon after. I carried his tablet to the dining table and sat down like I was about to read the news. The footage loaded slowly. There I was, coat half off, cane against the wall. I looked smaller than I felt. Older. That hurt more than I expected. Then Mark entered the frame. No hesitation. No glance at me. Just the flick of his wrist as he tossed my cane into the trash. "You'll manage." I watched it 3 times. Then I noticed what mattered. My hand reaching for nothing. My body adjusting on instinct. That told a story without words. I saved the clip. Backed it up. Twice. Old habits. When I put the tablet back exactly where it belonged, I knew one thing for certain. Mark thought control meant silence. He forgot about memory. And once I had proof, I stopped wondering if I was imagining things, and started deciding what to do next. Once I had the footage, fear disappeared, because fear needs uncertainty, and I had none left. I didn't confront Mark. Not yet. Evidence loses power when you wave it around too soon. Instead, I stayed exactly the same on the outside. Slow movements. Polite responses. Quiet presence. Inside, I was working. Every morning after they left, I reviewed the recordings. Not just the cane. Days of ordinary footage no one ever watches. Ordinary is where patterns live. Mark stood too close when he corrected me. His body leaned forward. Mine leaned back. He rolled his eyes when my back was turned, then smoothed his face when Emily entered the room. Pressure applied. Then hidden. Nothing dramatic. Nothing a stranger would call abuse. Together, it formed a rhythm. What surprised me most was myself. On camera, I looked smaller. Shoulders slightly rounded. Hands folded like I was bracing for impact that never quite came, except it did every day. Seeing yourself from the outside is brutal. At my age, it's also clarifying. One afternoon, Emily came home early and found me sorting documents at the table. Bank papers, medical statements, things I'd postponed. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Organizing," I said. She hesitated. "About the other day with the cane." Silence does better work than confrontation. I waited. I should have said something. she whispered. Yes, I replied. Just that. She flinched. Guilt makes people uncomfortable. They either act on it or bury it. Emily had learned to bury things well. That night, Mark was unusually polite. Asked if I needed anything. Spoke softer. Control wavers when intuition senses change. He didn't know what had shifted. Only that it had. And when men like Mark feel control slipping, they don't back down. They watch closer. The moment Mark started being careful with me, I knew he was scared. He closed doors more gently. Asked before moving things. Even asked how my leg was doing. The words sounded practiced, like he'd rehearsed them in the car. Emily noticed too. Confusion flickered across her face. Hope mixed with suspicion. I didn't change my behavior. That was important. I thanked him when he held a door. Answered when spoken to. Let him believe his small correction had worked. Every morning, I widened the timeline on the footage. Weeks. Patterns. Context. I wasn't building a case yet. I was building understanding. Then I started organizing something else. My finances. Dependence creeps in quietly. Rent vanished. Bills handled. Groceries appeared. Relief disguised as loss. My pension was mine. My savings untouched. Then I found the paperwork that explained Mark's confidence. The house. Emily and Mark's names were on it, but the down payment came from me. A temporary loan. Mark had called it. No contract. Just trust. Later is a word people use when they don't intend to act. I made a list. What I owned. What I controlled. What I could withdraw from legally, cleanly, without drama. That evening, I asked Emily to sit with me. I need to talk about my living situation, I said. Her shoulders stiffened. Are you unhappy? I'm unsafe, he replied. She blinked. I'm not accusing him, I said gently. I'm addressing outcomes. I'll be making arrangements, I continued. And I'll be reassessing my financial involvement. Are you mad? She asked. No, I said. I'm awake. That night, Mark barely spoke to me, but I could feel his attention circling. Because once you stop explaining yourself, people like Mark realize they're losing something they can't control. Mark cornered me in the living room because control always gets desperate before it collapses. I don't like what's happening, he said, standing between me and the hallway like the space belonged to him. Calm voice. Tight jaw. You're creating tension in this house. I'm responding to it, I said. He crossed his arms. Emily's upset. You're making her choose. No. Iraplia. I'm making her see. That's when his mask slipped, just a little. Enough to show the irritation underneath. You're exaggerating, he snapped. You always have. You're old. You're sensitive. Old. Sensitive. Useful words. They shrink reality until it fits someone else's comfort. I nodded once. Then this will be easy. He frowned. What will? I took my phone from my pocket and placed it on the coffee table. No drama. No shaking hands. The video started. The hallway. The timestamp. Me leaning my cane against the wall. Then him. I watched his reflection in the TV screen as recognition hit. His shoulders stiffened. His mouth tightened. That's not, he started. The cane hit the trash. The lid closed. His voice. You'll manage. Silence. I played the second clip. The angle that showed Emily stopping in the hallway, seeing everything, then turning away. Emily stood frozen in the doorway. You did that, she asked him. It's not what it looks like, he said too fast. You threw away her cane, she whispered. She could have fallen. She didn't, he snapped, then stopped himself. I stood carefully, steady without help. I've spoken to a lawyer, I said. I'm making arrangements to leave. And I'll be formalizing the money I contributed to this house. Mark opened his mouth. And if my age is ever used to excuse your behavior again, I continued, this footage won't stay private. He moved out of my way without thinking. Exposure didn't destroy Mark, but it ended the story he told himself. After the confrontation, nothing exploded. It just started collapsing. Mark stopped pretending. The politeness vanished overnight. He avoided being alone with me. Avoided the hallway camera. Avoided my eyes. That told me everything. Emily changed too. Not dramatically. Real change never is. She paused before agreeing with him. Asked questions she used to swallow. Silence redirected becomes resistance. One morning, Mark didn't go to work. He sat at the table, phone pressed to his ear, voice tight. Damage control. A few days later, Emily told me he'd been placed on administrative leave. Unrelated, she said. But timing always matters. At home, Mark tried once more. You're tearing this family apart, he said. No. Iraplia. I stopped holding it together for you. That frightened him more than anger ever could. The lawyer called. Everything was moving forward. Clean, legal, quiet. A week later, Mark packed a suitcase. Temporary, he said. Emily didn't stop him. When he left, the house exhaled. 2 weeks later, I moved into a small apartment near the river. No stairs. Quiet mornings. My own kettle. My own rules. I bought a new cane. Not to replace what was lost, but because I chose it. Mark called once. Apology mixed with self-pity. I didn't respond. I didn't win. I reclaimed. And what I reclaimed wasn't just my independence. It was my voice. The quiet after I moved out scared me more than the chaos, because peace takes time to trust. My new apartment was small, but it was mine in a way that had nothing to do with paperwork. Morning light spilled across the kitchen table exactly where I drank my tea. No one adjusted the blinds. No one complained about the kettle. I kept catching myself pausing, listening for irritation that never came. That kind of waiting doesn't disappear overnight. It settles into your muscles. My hips still hurt on cold mornings. The cane rested by the door, not as a symbol anymore, just a tool. Sometimes I used it. Sometimes I didn't. The choice was mine again. Emily visited a couple weeks later. She came alone. She stood in the doorway like she wasn't sure if she was a guest or something else. It's nice, she said. It's enough, I replied. We drank tea in silence that wasn't heavy, just unfamiliar. She told me Mark had moved into a short-term rental. Work was complicated. Conversations were careful now, like stepping through broken glass. I don't know what's going to happen, she said. You don't have to, I told her. You just have to stop lying to yourself. She cried then. Not dramatically. Honestly. And for the first time, she didn't apologize for it. After she left, I took my first real walk along the river. Flat path. Cool air. People passed without looking twice. I liked that. I wasn't performing strength or weakness. I was just there. That's when I realized something important. I hadn't escaped. I had returned. And the last thing I needed to do had nothing to do with Mark at all. The final step wasn't confrontation. It was closing a door I should have shut years ago. On a quiet Tuesday morning, I went to a notary. No rules. No pressure. I read every line before I signed. I updated my will. Clarified beneficiaries. Locked kindness into structure, so it couldn't be mistaken for permission again. It wasn't dramatic. It was responsible. Afterward, I had lunch alone by the river. Ordered what I wanted. Ate slowly. No explanations. No justifications. At my age, peace doesn't come from fixing people. It comes from stepping out of roles that were never meant to be permanent. Mark left one final message weeks later. Long, careful. Apology diluted with excuses. I deleted it without responding. Some conversations end because they've already said everything that matters. I still talk to Emily, carefully, honestly. Without rescuing her from choices she has to make herself. She's learning that love doesn't require self-erasure. I hope she keeps learning. As for Mark, I rarely think about him now. When I do, there's no anger. Anger is heavy. I carried enough weight in my life. The cane stands by my door. I use it when I need it. I leave it behind when I don't. It never defined me. What defined me was the moment I stopped letting someone else decide what I deserved. There are women like me everywhere, moving carefully through spaces that have grown impatient with them. If you're one of them, hear this clearly. You are not difficult. You are not dramatic. You are not asking for too much. You are asking to be treated like a human being. And if someone responds by diminishing you, believe their actions, not their words. Pause. Observe. Prepare. You don't need to shout to be powerful. You don't need revenge to reclaim yourself. You just need the courage to stop participating in your own disappearance. Because dignity doesn't fade with age, it waits for permission to return. If you like this story, like and subscribe and comment your thoughts.